I love art, but to me, art is more about eliciting emotional responses, where craft to me is a little bit more about um, creating something with a given function. And I am not making a qualitative judgment.
Shit's about to go down.
I'm feeling something in my spirit.
Chats and Tatts with Aaron, Della, Vedova.
Hey everybody, welcome to Chats and Tatts with me, your host, Aaron, Della, Vedova. I'm here with a very interesting guest. I don't know this man very well. We kind of met through knives, of all things, but I've gained a deep respect for what he does as a craftsman. Specifically, I'm a tattoo artist. I'm a craftsman. It took me 30 years of studying needles and inks and the intimate details of these things to make great tattoos. And what you're going to learn today is this guy's in the same boat. I mean, what he goes through to make his knives is quite astounding, and they're quite beautiful as well. You're going to see some of them today. He's not only that, he's a husband, he's a father, he's a black belt in Jiu Jitsu. I just think you're going to be very interested in what he has to say about how he got to this place in his life, making knives. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, Brandon Hampton.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks, Aaron. I really appreciate it, and I've been looking forward to this.
I'm glad to have you here. Thanks for coming. I should have added, I forgot. He also likes whiskey and bourbon, and he brought this beautiful bottle of bourbon that we're sipping on right now. It's actually made by Jim Beam, which I told him. He said, what kind of liquor do you like? I'm like, fuck man, I'm so easy, I drink Jim Beam. He's like, really? But this is their limited edition. I don't know, what is this?
So this is 2 years old, and it seems like not a lot of time. And this is a callback to the end of Prohibition, when they were kind of starting back up the machine. And so this is a, kind of just a little wink and a nod back to that time. And there's a lot of flavors and stuff that you don't get out of more mature casks that you get from this being taken off so early. So we're kind of, I suppose, taking a little time machine with this, but I'm not mad about it. It's pretty tasty.
I had a sip. It's delicious. So to be clear, it's a 2 year only because they had to get it out there. Right, because Prohibition just happened, so they can't just sit around soak it for 8 years. They got to get the shit on the market.
Yeah,
and this is the first stuff they made after Prohibition.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the initial impetus for this, right? So all the 2 year old stuff obviously got sold way back when. So this isn't that stuff,
right? But
that was the idea behind it. It was, we got to get this on the market.
People need their liquor, man.
It's it's granddad's cough medicine,
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're going to get into knives, but maybe before that, I'd like to hear a little bit about your whole jiu-jitsu thing. I mean, you're a black belt. I don't know a ton about it. I don't do jiu-jitsu, but I think I know enough to get a black belt is many, many, many years of work, right? How many years have you been practicing jiu-jitsu?
So I started back in 2010 under Nelson Montero. Nelson is a red and black coral belt. He's in Encinitas, and he's one of the guys who started the ADCC. So he has a very illustrious lineage in the jiu-jitsu community. And so I trained with him for a long time. I didn't move away from him for any reason. I'm just still training under one of his black belts, Professor Aaron Collins. He's up at Carlsbad Jiu-Jitsu. So Nelson is at Gracie Baja in Encinitas, and now I'm with Aaron at Carlsbad Jiu-Jitsu, and both of them are awesome, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I think that Jiu-Jitsu makes life better. And my wife's actually a brown belt, and my daughter, she's 12. She's been training since she was 5, and my son will be 2 in January 1st, actually. And once he's old enough, I'm going to be hoping to get him on the mats. It's not... you don't want to pressure a kid into doing anything, but
then they'll hate it.
Yeah. It's like, how do I get him to love it as much as I do without making it seem like he's being
He'll
forced to
watch
do
his
it?
dad. He'll be like, my dad's a fucking badass. I want to be a badass. He might not do it at 2, but he'll eventually want it. He's a boy. He's going to want to be tough like his dad.
Well, he's a thick little guy. He's people think he's 3 or 4 because he's, I'll make steak and he'll just get handfuls of it. And he'll eat more than half a pound of chicken breast or steak at a time. And I'm certainly not trying to force feed him or anything, but he's stout.
Oh God, I wish my kids would eat stuff like that. There's the crackers and all that bullshit all the time. Like, just eat one piece of chicken tonight, please. I got 2 girls, and I fight with them on this all the time.
I've spoiled him, unfortunately, from the get-go. He was having, because of all of my chefs, he's already had bluefin, Toro belly at the age of like 8 months. He was having A5 Wagyu over at Matsu in Oceanside, amazing Japanese restaurant, when he was, I think, just over a year old. So I think I'm doomed in terms of grocery bills because he's very accustomed to prime cuts and everything.
He's going to go off to college and be like, what kind of shit are they feeding us here? Well, let me, something about jiu-jitsu that comes up a lot when you talk to people that are heavily into it, and you mentioned this a little bit, is how much it does for your mind, your soul, your life, how you live life. I mean, it can easily just be brushed off as, oh, you go somewhere and you learn how to fight, how to beat people up. But I like you to speak on that a little bit. It's a little deeper, isn't it?
Yeah. I think in order to get good at jiu-jitsu, first thing you need to do is be really good at not being good at something. And that seems
humble.
That seems simple enough. And a lot of people are like, no, if you want to, show me how to, frame a door or something, I realize I'm not going to be good at it to start. But it's more than that. You need to be okay with, you're going to go in the first day and there might be a 14-year-old kid who takes away your ability to breathe. Are you okay with that? Is that comfortable for you? And that discomfort is either going to lead you to go, well, I want to overcome this, or it's going to say, I don't like people seeing me in this vulnerable situation. Right now, there's guys at my gym who are young. There's a guy named Pedro who's, I think he's like 17 and like 145 pounds. He gives me so much trouble. And it's not like I don't know what I'm doing. I've been training for over 12 years. But there are people who are really good despite their physical attributes, despite their age, despite their appearance. And you have to be okay with not being good in front of other people and it taking a long time to get better. And you may never get there. You may train for so many years that you start to become in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, and older. And now it doesn't matter how much technique you have, your body's just not cooperating with you. And then you have to ask yourself, why am I there? Am I there to be a world champion? Or am I there because this adds value to my life? And am I okay not winning every match? Because if you're the kind of guy that needs to win all the time, you're not going to do well there.
Yeah.
But
humility. I could see a great, we all could use more humility. And going in there and having a 14-year-old kid remove your ability to breathe, I think would develop that quite rapidly.
I've also described it as a bit of forced meditation. I've gone into jiu-jitsu before. One of my buddies had passed away on a motorcycle like the day before. And I went in the next day just full of piss and vinegar. I'm going to wreck everybody here. I just wanted to let out all of the steam, right? And I'm doing poorly. I'm getting passed by blue belts. I'm not where I need to be, and I start to calm myself, and I start to get back in the groove, and that peace kind of takes over of I need to get back to where I'm thinking more clearly, and all of a sudden I'm doing better, and I'm getting back to zero. Things are resetting, and I think that does a lot for a lot of people. I know multiple people that I've trained with who have lost children, who I know wouldn't be doing as well as they are right now if they didn't have that kind of community. Because we do say to each other, every time you're tapping, you're admitting to the other person that they could have killed you at that moment. And so every day we die on the mats together. And I'm not the first person to say that, but I think it's very true. You develop quite a brotherhood on those mats.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, that is very cool. I could see how that would be very deep psychological healing, I guess, and the brotherhood that's created through that process. It's also interesting jiu-jitsu is sort of like a thinking man. It's a brute force isn't going to get you, like you just said. You went in there full of piss and vinegar. You had a lot of energy coming out of you, but you weren't effective. It's the ability to exert your body and your strength, but you're doing it in a very intentional, intelligent way. Like, right? You move your wrist this way, you're done. You got to be very aware of these things, right? I do. There is a small part of me that's like, I should probably go do that. I'm 51. I'm like, shit, I know I can. And I'm on the fence lately because of the rave reviews from so many people I respect that just can't say enough about how much it's helped them in their marriage, helped them in their other relationships, business, their own mental health, all these things. I'm like, God, who doesn't want more of that? I could use more of that. And I could also use something new. I'm a yoga guy. I love my yoga, but 15 years and I don't know, something new might be fun. We'll see. Maybe I'll come down there and you can whip my ass a few times. I could use some humility too. Tapping out, have you tap me out a few times, see if I can stick around.
Well, and there's different, I guess you'd say personalities at different gyms. I remember at Encinitas, they're like a beach community. It's a little bit more affluent. When you roll there, there's this confidence everybody kind of has because they're all kind of doing well in life. And then when I was in law school down in San Diego, I was rolling at the Gracie Baja under Dominic Parker, and Dominic's an awesome teacher. Probably out of all of the special forces guys I've ever met, out of all the close quarters combat guys I've ever met, he is the last person I'd ever want to get into a real fight with. That man genuinely enjoyed inflicting pain on other people. I love that guy to death, though. That guy's awesome. But everybody down in San Diego, a lot of 19-year-olds who were broke with nothing, and they rolled that way. There was some savagery on those mats. And so you got to kind of pick where you are in your life, try different gyms. The gym I'm at right now in Carlsbad, there's amazing competitors there, but a lot of us are dads. And I work with my hands. If I'm doing Jiu Jitsu with some 270-pound guy and he tries to wrist lock me really hard, I'm like, come on, man. I need to feed my family more than I need to be trying to get out of your aggressive wrist locks. And so you got to find what works best for you.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the dad gym, the one you mentioned last. And I live in Carlsbad, so that works great. And I need my hands too. And that was one of the reasons I sort of avoided it a little bit is, I don't know, I'll get in there and break my thumb. And there I am, not working, not tattooing for 3 months or whatever it is, I know that's probably pretty rare and everyone's very respectful. And that probably doesn't happen very often. But yeah, the dad gym, that's the one. Well, you'll have to give me that one after the show. That's cool, man. That's rad. So, knives. Mm-hmm. I mean, before we get into looking at these beautiful creatures that you brought here today, I want to hear a little bit about, it's just fascinating to me that you even do this. It's like I say blacksmith. I know you're not a blacksmith, but it's like one of those old world things that I feel like is dead. And, machines make knives now, mostly, right? Companies in China are making our world's knives. And there was a day where if you needed a knife, you had to find a man who understood so much to make you that knife. And that is a bit dead, but it isn't. There are still people like you around that are taking the time and energy and love and passion and making works of art. Not only beautiful knives, but ones that are sturdy and will last you many lifetimes. These knives will go from their owners to their kids to their kids' kids. These are heirlooms. Anyway, that's a bit about what you do. Let's start with how you ended up here. How'd you end up making knives?
Yeah. So, well, I guess to kind of preface all of it, I love cooking. And that's because my grandparents on my mother's side. My grandfather's Italian and my grandmother is Mexican. And so my grandfather ran the first restaurant in San Diego that made pizza up in Escondido.
Oh, shit.
Loris Gardino's Italian restaurant in Escondido was open in the 40s. And I think it was 43 they opened up. And I was raised in that restaurant. And so I loved cooking, and I saw cooking, and I saw the industry. I saw what it did to my grandparents and how hard it was and how difficult it was, but just the way it brings families together. And if you're looking for a combination that makes somebody love food, Mexican, Italian, I was not a thin child. And when I got to the point where I was going on for my degree after high school, I needed to find work. And initially, I ended up working at the mall in Carlsbad at a place called The Edge. And my good buddy Nick was the one who started to get me into it because I went in and I heard that knives were made out of different steel. And I thought, what do you mean? Steel is steel, right? It's stainless or it's not. I didn't know anything more than that. And then I start to see that there's different designations. There's ATS 34, BG 42, S30V, S90V. What do these numbers mean? And what it is steel in its simplest form is iron and carbon that is heat treated. And any other elements that are present in it changes the recipe, and it can be used for any number of things. You might use it as steel suspension cables for a bridge, in which case you want it to have certain properties, elasticity essentially. Or you may be making slitter blades for cutting diapers. It really depends on what you want. So you'll heat treat it differently, you'll make it differently. And I was fascinated with knowing, well, how and why would you make it differently? And so I ended up working there and doing a lot of my own research while I was getting my history degree. And I ended up getting a Strider knife, which was the best tactical folding knife out there. They made these amazing frame lock folders. All the best military guys got them, but only the best. It was Marine Corps Det 1 guys, Delta guys, Rangers, all the Tier 1 assets. And so I ended up getting one, but there was just a little bit of, lock play on there. And these were $300, $400 knives. So I'd love to be able to get this fixed. And my buddy said, well, just go over to San Marcos. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, they're over in San Marcos. I said, no, the world's best tactical knives aren't made 15 minutes from here. He says, yeah, man. So, shit. So I drove over there, and I met Dwayne Dwyer, and my knife got fixed by one of the guys, Chris, at the shop. And I'd asked Dwayne, I said, do you guys need someone to push a broom around? And Dwayne said, absolutely. And we became really good friends, and I'll still go over to his shop and drink and stuff. But yeah, the entire time I was getting my undergrad, I worked over at Strider. I worked with Dwayne specifically. He's a big materials guy. And why that's significant is I think a lot of guys that get into knife making, they're looking to do an old school craft. They're looking into that blacksmithing side of things, forging as an art form. And what Dwayne was doing is making knives for Tier 1 assets who are being dropped off in locations where they can't get reinforcements. So the whole idea of art is right out the window. This just
Pure function.
Yeah, this needs to work. It's like, well, what are you using this knife for? And eventually I'd be in the charge of the repair department, and I'd get knives that were coming back that were small folding pocket knives that a guy said, hey, the very tip chipped when I used this with a cinder block to pry open a Humvee door that was blown up by an IED. I go, shit, the steel works, and right. I would sharpen it up and bring it right back to 100%. And that always gave me great confidence in our materials, seeing them used in that way. My knives are not, in my mind, designed as a type of artistry so much as a type of function. My knives have to work. And I think there's a pretty big difference in my mind, the way I view art versus the way I view craft, which not everybody puts a barrier between those two, but I do. And I actually look at artistry a little bit jealously. I wish I did have that bug in me, but I don't view myself as particularly creative because, again,
I would say maybe artistic, creative. You are. I mean, it takes creativity. We'll get into what you've done here, but I can see 100 creative choices that were made by you.
Yeah.
There's a difference between those two things, creativity and artistry. Artistry might be more someone who can sculpt or paint, but creativity, that's decision making, and you made decisions that others wouldn't have. And a lot of those decisions I can tell right now were the right ones, but I'll let you finish. But I just thought I'd say that. I want to give you more credit than you're giving yourself right now.
Well, I just, I guess a perfect way that I would, a good example of that. Dave and Waite probably makes the best sushi in San Diego. He owns the restaurant Wrench and Rodent up in Oceanside, and they do insane stuff.
I know him well. Been there many times.
Oh man,
I love that man.
And he's such a good person.
Sweetheart, love him.
And I made the first Yanagiba I ever made for him, which is a sushi knife. Yanagiba means willow leaf. So while this might be called a K-tip Yanagiba, it's actually not described well as Yanagiba because the tip isn't that willow leaf shaped blade. But the first one that I made for him, he wanted it to have the Union Jack lasered on it. He's from the UK, and his family is. And the handle, I did, the red, blue, and white, like the Union Jack flag. And it was a beautiful knife, high polish on there. For all reasons aesthetic and artistic, you would say it was a success. And he's never told me anything other than that he loves it. But I would go to the shop and he wouldn't be using it. And I'd say, "What's up with this knife?" And he'd say, "Oh, it's too beautiful. It's just for special occasions." I hate that. So eventually we talked in. Omakase is when you kind of do chef's choice at a sushi bar. And we talked about doing omakase for knives. Just make me something and I'll get it. I said, "Oh, awesome." So I make him a 12-inch offset Yanagiba. Unheard of. The Japanese probably hate the idea of an offset Yanagiba. No one other than me, to my knowledge, has ever made one. But I make this offset Yanagiba.
What's that mean, offset?
So the blade actually, where the handle comes, the blade actually will drop down.
Okay.
So you'll see
that
it's
perfect alignment with the handle. It goes down and out.
But what that does, it brings the heel down far enough so that you're going to get more knuckle clearance. So you actually get more usable knife space. But then the backside, the ura, which is the hollow.
Well, like this. Does this count?
A little bit, but that's more of like a harpoon shape, but it's kind of in that direction.
Right.
But the ura, which is the hollow on the backside of a sushi knife, the backside of a sushi knife isn't flat. It's actually a hollow. So when you do an offset, it makes it a little hard to make it look uniform. But I had done this offset, and I made it 12 inches, so a bit longer, and I made the tip more upswept. And I brought it to Dave in this wild-looking knife, and he just says to me, he goes, "You've been watching me cut." I said, "Yeah." And from that moment on, I don't think I've ever seen him anywhere without a Meglio. And I go, okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, that first knife, I know he probably uses it sometimes, and I know it was made well. But you could throw that away, and I wouldn't care less. The knife that I'm happy about is the one that he uses. And that, I think, is the difference between like art and craft for me, is I think there's definitely a way for me to get things wrong. And it's not just about, a commissioner of a piece not liking it. It's like, well, was I able to make this the best tool, their favorite tool? Did I make it so that they didn't want to use a tool other than the one that I made? That, to me, is success. Which is different than, because I love art. I studied art in Rome. When it comes to frescoes, sculpture, Bernini, Brunelleschi, Pietro de Cartona, like I love art. But to me, art is more about eliciting emotional responses, where craft to me is a little bit more about creating something with a given function. And I am not making a qualitative judgment. I'm so glad there are artists out there. I have a hard time not laughing at myself if I try to do anything purely artistic, though, because I'm just going to go back and read some more books on, carbide distribution, because I just need to get back into my wheelhouse. I feel like a fraud, but, I think everybody that does a thing, a craft, art, anything, is going to be vulnerable to imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's cool, though. I mean, you're making things that need to be functional. I mean, that story of watching how Davin cuts and realizing the way he did it, he needs that blade to drop down, offset, give more room for his knuckles, shape it just the way. I mean, to me, there's some kind of poetic art in that. But there is some difference there. We could go all day about what's art and what's craft. I'm still going to insist that you're a craft-forward artist, very creative guy. But yeah, I mean, this is craft forward. You're building things out of steel, right? That's a little different than somebody that's just splashing paint on canvases and dancing around smoking DMT. But I've done that. The painting looked like shit. but I thought it was awesome. But no, this is great. So maybe this is a good time to let's talk about some of these things. I like hearing the details of the craftsman. What's this steel? What's this blade? What's the kind of handle? Why don't we walk through these and talk about these knives a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the largest one right here is a tuna sword, and when I say that, it's not just a gimmick. These are literally used to break down tuna. When you're able to catch a 250 plus pound tuna, a 10-inch chef knife doesn't reach the spine.
Right.
And what you don't want is to have that beautiful sashimi grade bluefin being sawed through with knives that are too short. So when you get a large tuna like that, you can get a blade that's like this, or they can make them even longer, make them a little bit shorter, depends on what kind that you typically catch, but you want to be able to make one clean slice. And so sashimi knives and sushi knives, what you'll notice is that there's not a secondary bevel on the edge like a traditional Western knife. You sharpen it from what's called the shinogi line all the way down to the edge. There's a slight curvature towards the tip called the koba, but it's whetstoned from the shinogi all the way forward. And then on the back side, as I mentioned before, there's what's called an ura, and so that's a hollow grind, so that when you lay it flat on the whetstone, you're only touching the perimeter of the entire piece, which makes it easier to deburr on that side. But the ura is probably the most difficult grind, in my opinion, to make on any knife. So there's not a lot of guys that I've found in America that make sushi knives. There are some, but it's just not as common as your typical 10-inch Western chef knives. And making a really long ura is very difficult. So as a Mexican-Italian guy, I always got a lot of flack for making sushi knives, so the kanji actually just reads Made in America. And then I've got the Meglio logo on the other side.
That's funny.
And that's it's full tang, which means that the steel goes all the way through to the end. It's not a partial tang or anything like that. And then the handle is made out of olive wood and then anodized titanium hardware, so it's hypoallergenic.
Wow.
And then Lennon Gunter, he is a butcher for Heritage Barbecue up in San Juan Capistrano. They're going to be opening up a location in Oceanside, which I'm very happy about. But they got voted like best barbecue in California, and I've seen him take his barbecue scimitar and cut a pig's foot in half with it. Being able to do those type of things is pretty impressive. And when you can do more things with your knife, you can do more things with your food. And for me, that's another beautiful part about the craft to me, is I kind of describe myself as a paintbrush maker. To me, the artists are the chefs. And if they get the best paintbrushes, they can make better Mona Lisas. And I'm much more interested in seeing what they can do with my knives, than I am just... And I'll see a lot of chef knife makers who don't quite get that. You'll see I get a kick out of every weird thing that gets happen, that is a result of the knives that I make. I want them to be able to make better stuff because I gave them a knife that could do more things.
That's cool. That's a great way to look at it. You're the paintbrush maker, and then the artist, if you make those brushes right and you make them great, they're just going to create better paintings with them. That's a cool analogy. I like that. So on this scimitar, love the name. It's like that little boy in me. There's a little boy in me right now that doesn't even care about anything you just said. I'm just like, ooh, knives. Those are cool. Every little boy wants to run around the backyard with that fucking thing. Ha ha! But the scimitar, what is it made out of? What's the handle? Let's hear about that one.
Yeah, so this one's a pretty unique piece. This one is made a little bit longer than most barbecue scimitars.
And it's a barbecue. Does it have to be barbecue?
We'll call it a barbecue scimitar just to denote that it's not a Middle Eastern weapon from 1200 AD. But yeah, barbecue scimitar. But I did it with a bit of a heavier, kind of a harpoon tip on there. I wanted that weight to be a little bit forward while decreasing the overall drag of the blade as it goes through the meat. This one I'm really proud of. We did a black DLC coating on there. So DLC stands for diamond-like coating. And that's the same thing that you'll see on really high-end watches like Rolex and stuff. And that is a particular molecules, so sp2 and sp3 carbon molecules, are bombarded on the surface of the steel through a process called PVD, which is particle vapor deposition. And so it actually impregnates the surface of the steel with these carbon molecules. So it's totally food safe. It's not some spray-on coating. It's not Cerakote.
Not coming off.
No. And so it's a different kind of coating. You'll see a lot of people use Cerakote and stuff like that, and that's not really food safe. So that's the DLC coating, and then this handle is actually bison bone dredged out of the Great Lakes from the Pleistocene era. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then
That's crazy.
The wood is bog oak, so same thing. When wood is submerged in water, even for thousands of years, it won't petrify. So the way that we get the world's oldest woods is when we find them in bogs and at the bottom of lakes because they won't petrify after so long.
I would think they would just disintegrate in a bog, but they don't. It preserves them.
You know what's funny is it actually ends up being really easy to work with because a lot of the oils kind of leach out of it and then it becomes super stable. So then when you're working with it on a sander and grinding it and stuff, it's actually kind of a dream to work with. It would.
Plasticine bone. How do you even get? Is that hard to get? I mean, where do I go on Amazon or how do I get that?
I have so many people asking me where do I source the things I have, and I've used insane stuff. I've gotten mammoth molar, like woolly mammoth molar, brain coral. There's so many interesting things that I've worked with over the years. The oldest workable wood on the planet is ancient cowrie wood that's 50,000 years old.
Jesus.
Yeah, I've seen a lot in 17 years, and there's a lack of understanding. I had a lady who saw the cowrie wood one time and goes, "I hope you didn't chop down that tree." Trees don't live 50,000 years. They're old, but they're not that old.
That tree's happy. I'm giving him a second life.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, didn't you make this with somebody in mind?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps. I thought we'd talk about that. Everyone on the show probably knows by now I did Joe Rogan's tattoos, both his arm sleeves, and I just had to give a little shout out here that this knife was made for you, Joe, with you in mind. I know Brandon is a big fan. I mean, you guys share a lot in common in the way of life and jiu-jitsu, but and I think, knowing what I know about you, Joe, I think you'd like to have this in your kitchen. I'll text you after the show, but this knife's coming your way. Get ready.
Yeah, definitely. Once I got Pleistocene bison bone, I thought that sounds up his alley. And I've never seen anybody else make knives with that material. And we had to get just the right femurs so that it was the right size to be made into handles for that. So it was an effort, but I think it came out really nice. And
It's beautiful.
if you're cutting something like an elk heart, you want something a little longer with a little more heft. And so that was definitely the impetus behind that design. And I've got two of these knives with these Kydexes. They're what's called Saya, Saya.
Hello, friends. I just want to take a minute to thank you for all the love and support you've given us over here at Chats and Tats. If you love tattoos and you love hearing from folks that are going to tell you about their deep personal tattoo journey, stories that I think reveal the beautiful nature of this art form, please give us a like or even give us a follow here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a comment. We would love to hear more from you, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, less of. Your comments mean the world to us. So with that being said, I want to thank you once again. And now back to the show.
The Yanagiba, again, is off of a willow leaf design. There's some interesting ways to make Yanagibas. There's the traditional way is just very pointy. This one is a Kiritsuke style Yanagiba, and then there's also another style where the front's actually flat. It's called a takoiki or takobiki, and the reason why they're flat is because it's really funny, actually. The idea was, if you're sitting at a sushi bar, and let's say you're nobility, if the point is facing you, it's considered insulting to have a point facing you. So they would blunt.
So when you say flat, you mean like a square?
Yeah. So it literally looks like it comes up and then
Yeah.
It's just flat in the front.
So you're not being threatening to the
Yeah.
customer.
But this one is actually made with skateboard handle from young Cash Weight up at the Wrench and Rodent. He was kind enough to give me some of his skateboards so we could make some skateboard handles out of that. So
That's cool.
that's a pretty cool one. And then again, it's still got the Made in America kanji, and then the Meglio knives on the other side and the ura. And then this is my kind of my flagship. This is my bread and butter. Anything you do in a kitchen is going to be done well with this. This is a 10-inch Western Chef. It's made out of Magna Cut. Magna Cut is a steel that was made literally last year from Dr. Laren Thomas. Incredible metallurgist. This steel is not only stainless, which is awesome, but it is also tougher than all other stainless. So usually when corrosion resistance goes up, toughness goes down. So as you get higher stainless qualities, you get chippier knives. And he was able to get this particular mixture done so well that while the corrosion resistance is through the roof awesome, it's also incredibly tough. So for knife steel nerds out there, this has the toughness equivalence to 4V while having the corrosion resistance of 20 CV. So it's a unheard of steel. It's awesome stuff. My 10-inch Western Chef knives are convex ground. The black G10 handles are hypoallergenic. You could literally take one of these scales off and shoot it with a 45 and it won't go through it. Everything about this is awesome. If you give me,
This is pure function right here.
oh yeah,
This is like, fuck all the mammoth bones and everything. This is function knife.
yeah. And I round the inside of the finger choil. I round the spine. There shouldn't be any hot spots when you actually get the pinch grip going on there. I've got this in a 10-inch. I've got an 8-inch, and I've got a 6.5-inch Kiritsuke and a 3.5-inch paring knife, and that's my production line. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for like the best chef knife in the world with no frills on it, this is where to go for that. And all made in the U.S. And that was kind of my goal when I first made Meglio, is I wanted to be able to say, you know, you can get your German and Japanese knives for X amount of dollars. Why don't you just get one made in America that's made out of much better material? And I said, well, I'm not going to spend all the money on marketing. I'm not going to spend all the money on the commercials. I'm just going to make the best knives I possibly can. Like you said, fuck the frills. I'm just going to make it the best. And the hardware, I think a lot of people get thrown off by the titanium hardware. I say this. If you ever bought a car with a hood that didn't open, you'd be skeptical. No matter how much they tell you, well, it's not supposed to ever break down. Cool story, bro. Knives do need maintenance from time to time. Being able to remove the handles, clean underneath them, replace the hand, do whatever you need to do is not a bug, it's a feature. I'm a big fan of removable hardware. As somebody who was in charge of knife repair departments for years, a knife you can't take apart is useless. But that's my flagship. But the last knife.
Oh, I'm excited about this part, everybody.
Yeah.
This is where I get all the attention.
Yeah, buddy. So this is the one that Aaron and I have been working on this whole time. So this is part of my signature series. So what we're doing is I'm collaborating with different artists, and they are in some way incorporating their art into a knife with me in some way. And this is a great way. You know, we were talking about being able to, Aaron was telling me about these beautiful pieces of oil on canvas, paintings here in his shop. And they're a way for him to be purely creative as opposed to having a commissioner of a piece, right, with a tattoo. This is a way for him to purely express himself. And I think that's really important. I get a lot of custom art workers in some capacities who are so bogged down by custom orders, it becomes difficult to do anything that they enjoy. And so this for me is a passion project where I get to work with another artist and say, we just want to make something fun. This is for us. And then when we're done, I'm sure people will want it because it'll be cool. But no one's leading us the way down. And so with this, we called this Tempest Beacon, and you can see Aaron's beautiful artwork here with the lighthouse and the light rays emanating out through the waves. I was able to get my I've got a 50-watt fiber laser, and so we did different patterns to get that kind of stuttering bronzy effect of the light through the silver waves against the black DLC. We did Amboina burl with blue and white resin pearlescent resin with blue titanium hardware against unidirectional carbon fiber liners. I thought was very fitting with the ocean waves breaking across the seashore. And so I think this came out really well. We only did 10 of them. And so we've got the signature on the back, Meglio Knives, Aaron Della Vedova, and each one of them is numbered 4 of 10 with the name of the actual artistic piece on there. And so I'm going to continue to work with other artists and making things like this, but I love being able to see what I can create with somebody else's passion as well, kind of driving the ship. So I'm very happy to be led through their artistic process as well. So this was a very fun piece for me to work with Aaron on.
Well, me too. I mean, this is such an honor. My art on a knife, of all things. I never thought I'd see the day. And when you called me up and said you were going to do this project, I didn't know much about your company and Meglio Knives. And I slowly started following you on Instagram and watching the videos. And I slowly realized, like, oh, this guy is very serious about what he does. And that's when I really got inspired to create the art. And to see it on the blade right now, the way you put it together with this beautiful handle, dude, that is dope. Hey, everybody out there, if you're a fan of my work or my art, these are going to go, when are these going to be for sale?
We're looking for either late November or early December as a release date. Okay. So we want these to be available if you guys would like them before Christmas so that you guys have plenty of time for that. So sign up to our newsletter on our website. We do have our newsletter, and that is on our Instagram, Meglio_knives. MEGLIO_knives. We do have that link in our bio as well to subscribe to our newsletter, so you can find out the exact time that they will go for sale. But the last signature series we did with Ian Carapolo up in Montana, all the knives sold in like an hour. So they do go pretty fast, and they are all
there's
numbered.
Only 10. Well, 9.
Yeah.
I'm taking that one.
Yes.
Yeah, there's only 9. So is it just a flat rate, or is they bid on these things, or it's just that's the price, first come, first serve?
Yeah, flat rate. So I think these are going for these should be about $12.50 a piece, and yeah, there's only going to be 9 of them. So wow. You got to jump on them if you want them.
Awesome, dude. Honored, stoked. This whole thing. This is so cool. I'm going to switch this over a little bit now. Tattoos. You're not a heavily tattooed guy. Hey, listen, let me say before you say anything, no judgment here. My wife has 0 tattoos. Been with her 23 years.
Really?
I have nothing but in fact, I've been in this world so long, I'm starting to respect people with no tattoos more than the ones with them. You know, they're like the unicorns out there that held their ground. But you have a couple tattoos. You've got your wedding ring finger.
Yeah.
Which is obviously what it means is obvious.
Yeah.
Right. What do you got on you? You got something on your chest under there. You don't have to rip it out, but you got a little something going on.
No,
there?
that's fine. I got so this is Latin. This is Forzened haec ola meminisse iuvabit, and that is a line from the Aeneid. I'm a history buff. My time in my shop is spent with earbuds in, listening to the great courses and philosophy and history. I get a lot of my academic itches scratched throughout the day. But that was my intention with my undergrad is I love history and philosophy and stuff. And so that for me, that particular phrase means perhaps one day we'll look back on this fondly. At that particular moment in the Aeneid, Aeneas has just seen his city destroyed, his wife killed, and half of his men just got lost at sea. And they're all looking at him, and they're saying, so what now? And he says, perhaps we'll look back on all of this fondly. And the longer wow. portion is actually, I think, even more like heart wrenching, but it's Talia voce refert corisco ingentibus eger spem volte simulat, which is a lot. But that says these things he does say with his face, or these things he does say with his voice, and fakes hope with his face, and buries in his heart a deep sorrow. And it's this idea of, you know, you have to be strong and you have to keep pushing. And if you're doing things correctly, the people around you that you love and are trying to move forward shouldn't know necessarily the struggle. And I'll do that myself. Again,
Sounds like a little bit of stoicism.
it's definitely steeped in stoicism. And I love Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, all the Stoic philosophers for sure. But I mean, there's days that I come home from work and it's not enough to go through work in my opinion. It's not enough to go through work, come home and have endured the day at work. My kids need to see that I'm home and I'm ready to be dad, and I'm ready to be happy, and I'm ready to smile. And it doesn't matter if I lost one of my workers, or if a contract that I wanted didn't come through, or if a piece I was working on got totally flubbed and now I'm behind on a custom order. It doesn't matter. They don't need to have my stress. And I've been surrounded by strong figures who are like that, whether it's my mother, my father. Like, I've had that. And so this idea of perhaps we'll look back on this fondly is a kind of way to say whatever's going through life, the grind is part of the joy of life. And it's not always good. There's been some tragedy, and you still got to just move through it. I guess I was never too much of a illustrative guy, because I was thinking about, you asking me about a tattoo that I might want. And I think everybody's got their own personality types when it comes to what they would want tattooed. And I've kind of like laughed in my own head, like, if I had Aaron for 30 hours, what would I want him to tattoo? I'm like, would I want him to do like a scene of Aeneas on the beach with his men? Like, that doesn't come across the right way. Like, and my tattoos are very much more for me than they are for anyone else. I mean, my wedding ring is literally for safety. I mean, you could get pretty messed up in a metal shop with a metal ring on, and even just from
That's why I did it.
even just from a comfort point of view, getting metal dust and exotic wood dust underneath the ring just means rashes. That's all it means. Yeah. You might be allergic to 2% of the hardwoods out there, but I work with thousands of them. So chances are you'll run into them. So I just, anything where I don't have to be collecting wood or metal dust underneath, connected to my skin, I try not to.
Well, I mean, I hear you. And this is where I'll say, like, after 30 years of tattooing, have nothing but respect for any type of tattoo somebody gets. There were the younger years where we thought we were so cool, and each of us were doing a certain style of art. And if others didn't want to get that, they were pretty fucking lame and stupid, and they would come in the shop. And I never really did this, but people I worked with would be like, "Can you believe that guy out front? What a fucking idiot, man. He wants this. Doesn't he know that what I do is the cool?" And then you see the egos and the attachment and all these things happening. And over the years, what I've really realized is tattoos should make people happy. They should fulfill something for them. It's not about me. I'm the delivery system. I'm your servant in a way. You've hired me to do something for you. I am of service to you. Now, are there things I don't do well? Yeah, that's different. Hey, I just don't. Hey, I love it. I don't really do that well. And today is one of those things, actually. One of the guys that works with me, Tarek, is going to be doing Brandon's tattoo today. And honestly, after 30, you're getting a font on your foot. We'll talk about what it means in a second. But I've been doing huge bodysuits now for 20 years. And man, my hands don't move so great on these micro stuff. Like, I'm used to dragging a line from a fucking armpit to a butt cheek, and it can have a wobble in it because it doesn't matter because it's like a giant painting. Anyway, when you told me your idea, I'm like, I would much rather have a guy like Tarek on this because he's he's got that laser beam focus right now. His hands are like a CNC machine, So that's why this ended up this way. Plus, I want all you guys to meet Tarek. He's an amazing artist, and he's going to do your tattoo today. But on that note, it's some words in Greek.
Yeah.
And what do they mean? What do they say?
So again, on the philosophical note, so kleos ophthitos is it literally translates to undying glory. So if you've ever read up on heroes like Achilles, Heracles, Theseus, these types of people, the whole reason they're fighting is for what they're leaving behind. This idea of immortality through deeds is where we get kleos ophthitos. And so I wanted that, and it's an interesting thing because I don't want kleos ophthitos in a sense of, well, I want it just for me, but I like the idea of like, well, what is it that I'm leaving behind? And so I've got kids, and what does my immortality bring? My son is named Leonardo, and he's named after my great-grandfather who came over from Calabria in the southern part of Italy. And when he got here, he refused to be part of the mafia in New York. He refused to be part of Tammany Hall, which is another type of mafia in New York. He had a car, and so they wanted him to run alcohol from Canada. He said, no, I'm just a working man. I'm just working for my family. He saw Babe Ruth play at Yankee Stadium. He lived through the Depression. He fought in World War I. What are the things that he left are so much more than my memories of him because it's my great-grandfather. I didn't have these memories of him. But he left this legacy that I can live up to, that my son can live up to. It's his great-grandfather. You know, like, what do we leave behind? What will be spoken of us when we're long gone? Mm-hmm. And so I like the idea of kleos ophthitos. And then the other one is arete. And arete is this idea that Aristotle had, which was moral and character excellence. Everything he did, he tried to find what's called the golden mean. So if you're trying to... He's really interesting. I kind of describe Aristotle as like a second Adam. If you read his books as if you're an alien who'd never been to Earth, it's like it's written for you. It's like, let me tell you what a tree is. Like, it's very like bare bones what Aristotle does. And one of the things he does is he tries to describe things by finding the mean of it. So if he was to tell you what a tree looked like, he would get together as many trees as he could find. And he would describe all the things that they have in common. And so he'd say they all have roots, they all have leaves, they all have a trunk. And then he would try to find the mean, the average between all of them, and say that's the perfection. And so for him, he was always trying to find whatever your purpose is, whether it's a tree or a bug or a lion or a human, what is your intended purpose, and how do we get to that idea of perfection within it? And so I think that combination of finding character excellence and what are we leaving behind, for me, that just kind of gives me a steadfast base. And I think that's why I want them on my feet. So
connecting you to the earth.
Yeah. And
your platform.
And again, like, my tattoos are largely like reminders for me, and they've worked. One of my brothers lost, his daughter like 4 years ago, and it was not long after I got this tattoo on my chest. And this idea of being able to live through hardship, being able to like wake up and take a shower and see that in the mirror, that's a real shit thing to live through. And, having a little encouragement through ink, I think was hugely beneficial. And I think if I start every day putting those 2 feet on the ground, what am I leaving behind? And am I being the best that I can be in terms of my character towards my fellow man, my family, those around me? I think that just, it's one more possible move towards being a better human. And I'd like to be a better human.
That is beautiful. That is why that tattoo matters. And it's not always going to be about the sickest back piece that I create for someone. That little tattoo on your foot has an incredible meaning. I was just inspired by that, actually. That was really inspiring. I'm going to stop it right there. I was going to add, but I don't think I can add to that. I think we're going to depart. Let's have a toast. Next up, the tattoo. We're going to go move over to the other side of the room and do some tattoos. See you on the other side. right, so here we are on the other side where the tattoos happen. I want you guys to meet Tarek. I work with him. He's awesome. He's a laser beam perfect tattooer. His work's amazing. You're going to see some of it right now. And he's going to take care of this tattoo today for Brandon. And I'm going to let it go from there. Stay tuned. All right, we're back from the other side. Except things are different now. Your feet have tattoos on them.
They do. They do. I'm feeling much more foot tattooed at the moment.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
You're gonna get up every morning. You're gonna get your stockings out, your pantyhose, whatever you put on, and you're gonna remember what those words mean to you.
I will.
Well, cheers to that, my friend. And Tarek, dude, you crushed it.
Thank you so much.
You guys will see it. We'll have some shots. Laser beam perfect by this man right here. And we'll be showing you other work he does, which is equally as fantastic. You really did a great job today. And I'm just stoked you're on the show, but I'm even more stoked that we work together, dude.
I feel very grateful, man. It's been an honor, and I appreciate you having me on the show, and thanks for letting me tattoo you, Brandon. So
Awesome. All right, boys. Cheers.
all right, cheers.
Cheers. All right. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Chats and Tats with Aaron Della Vedova.